Realistically speaking, the current issues driving the investment in food and bev, it's disruption. So it's a negative source in a sense, whether that's, COVID-related disruptions to supply chains, whether that's more recent issues with the flow of material goods. But I don't want to linger on that negative. When I think of the disruption, what's been really interesting is it's been a positive response. So 5 years ago, people might have said, hey, if I need to recover capacity or even think about growth or even innovate my product lines, I might have thought about buying new assets or expanding my plant. Now there's a lot of focus on how do I get the most out of the facilities that I own and the equipment that I have. And that's actually led people to think about making their own teams more effective. So instead of looking at operators as people who run machines and then feed information back to other systems, people are now putting their eye towards technology that equips operators, supervisors, people in specialty functions like quality with the kind of data they need to be more effective at what they do. The results can actually be really surprising when people look at the sorts of capacity recovery, quality improvement, and just general effectiveness that they can have from that kind of approach. Thinking about what innovation can mean in the food sector, that's actually an interesting question. If you go to somebody who's making, food products, snacks, beverages, they'll often think about the product itself, different packaging, different formulations and the like. What we're now seeing is that people are realizing that the capacity to innovate largely depends on the sorts of investments you're making in the enabling technology that's running the factory and in some of the supporting functions. So if I want to be really good at making new variations of flavor for a core product line, I probably have to be really good at qualifying new materials, and that probably means I need to think about the kind of information I get from my suppliers and be able to see how that material runs in my process lines. So what used to be 100% product focus is now on the question of, well, how do I take the business processes, the manufacturing works, the quality works, supplier qualification, and put innovative technology around those so they can be done quickly, repeatably, because innovation is never going to go away, has a business strategy. And then finally, I need it to be something that, gives me good answers, reliably, so that when I go to launch that new product or adapt that process, I've got confidence that it's going to be up and running, steady state, reliable, pretty quickly. So if I was going to be really concrete, I'd say that up to this point, a lot of food and beverage manufacturers have tended to acquire technology as part of the major pieces of equipment they bring on board. So you've got a very classic islands of automation kind of scenario. Your filler may be very intelligent about what it's doing within itself. It may not necessarily be set up to integrate easily to give you an understanding of the overall flow of a set of orders, quality results, whether or not there's anything underlying in the machine that may indicate that the asset itself may need some sort of maintenance intervention. So a lot of where we start with customers is getting them thinking about, is there a need for a general machine data backbone that can give them richer information for engineering, maintenance, and quality people to explore very detailed data? The second thing we look at is what about something that follows events? So things that can handle the work in process, production tracking, the quality events, the material receiving, and the like. With those in place, that actually means there's now pools of data that lend themselves to applying machine learning tools or just simple mashups of information presented to people with the right things beside each other in ways that support an existing business process or that let a human do a very fast investigation of an unusual situation. It's not always about the most advanced tech. Sometimes it's about repackaging what you've already got and then supplementing it with things that support that kind of working mode. So what kind of hurdles would FMCG or food and beverage type firms have to clear in pursuit of innovation? I think the one I would zoom in on is really a little bit of corporate culture, a little bit of organizational design. And I know that sounds like, well, why are we going off over there when Novotech's really all about software? People have to have a really good sense of what's possible and then be able to marry that to what they're trying to accomplish. And right now, a lot of organizations aren't actually set up so that the people who own the line of business responsibility are learning enough about tech, not to become their own engineers or IT people, but enough to have a realistic grasp of what's possible. And similarly, because of some of those economic challenges of years gone by, some of the tech enablement teams can fall into the habit of keep it running, not think through good ideas from a business perspective and then make a case for enabling tech. So I'd say organization and having an organization that can learn together, come up with a realistic plan as part of it. The funny thing is this doesn't just apply to having a realistic expectation for new tech like IoT or manufacturing execution systems or analytics. The flip side is true. If a company has grown up with an old mini computer-based financial system that did a little bit of inventory and a little bit of tracking and a little bit of quality, They may have perceptions about what's possible that are so out of date that if you sat them down today and asked them what would they want to try and accomplish, they'll restrict their requests and their interests to things that they think are possible. And if that's too far out of date, then you will have people passing up opportunities to take on board tools and technologies that are actually quite easy to adopt and assimilate, that would be hugely impactful, but they may not even think they can ask for, because to them, compared to what they've got, it feels like the Starship Enterprise. I had to place a bet on one thing in terms of tech that'll make a difference to food and beverage in the next few years. Okay, I'm going to cheat. I'm going to place a bet on two. Let's start with the most important one. It's in some ways a silly word, but let's talk about democratizing the access and usage of data. And what I mean by that is, right now in a typical operation, there will be systems that have got useful info siloed away because it was originally a tool bought for a particular job function or purpose. The maintenance system has got data that people need for, understanding reactive maintenance or proactive maintenance. SCADA systems are for operators, quality systems are for quality people. But when we talk about how operators can become more effective and work can be done more quickly, often the key is to be able to reach into a number of different systems and then have something that lets you present a combination of data points from different sources, but supporting a very particular process or a very particular type of user. And that, I think, is actually where the first wave of real impact will come from. Up to this point, when we've talked about doing away with islands of automation in the sector, it's always been sort of a, hey, building reports view. The new kinds of tools are more about pushing work and supporting info to a person when they need it, not just passively consuming reporting, when people get around to it. Now, the bonus topic actually relates to it. If I've gone to the trouble of knocking down the barriers to getting at different data sources, well, first I want to start by presenting that to humans, but now I've also made those data sources available to algorithms. So there is a role for machine learning and advanced artificial intelligence and such solutions. The ground level of readiness for that is actually the same level of readiness you need to serve the humans with better information first. And if you do it in that order, you'll have people from management all the way down to the operators who actually will trust what the next wave of AI tools will tell them.